Welcome to the CE Pro podcast. I'm Executive Editor Arlen Schweiger. I saw that this week marks the 24th anniversary of when VH1 premiered Behind the Music. And this week on the CE Pro podcast, we go behind the music of the CE Pro All-Star Band. That's something that our resident guitar god, Bob Archer, has been heading up since the days of the Electronic House Expo, EHX, and in recent years at the CEDIA Expo. He digs deep into industry band members' musical influences and personalities on this week's podcast. As always, be sure to subscribe to CE Pro's YouTube channel and hit that like button on our videos, or subscribe to the CE Pro podcast on Apple and Spotify and leave a review.
Hi, I'm Bob Archer, Senior Editor with CE Pro Magazine, and today I am happy to be with the CE Pro All-Star Band. Today, rather than talk specifically about the songs and the set list we're going to play, I want to have everyone in the audience learn more about the band itself. We have members of the industry from across the spectrum, and I'd like to introduce these guys to you, their companies and what instruments they play. And since I'm looking at Vince on my screen right now, Vince, could we start with you?
Sure. My name is Vince Luciani. I'm the Senior Sales Engineer with SurgeX. And I don't know, Bob, am I a founding member of the band when we did it back in 2011? Is that, would you consider me that?
Yeah, you and Minch. Yeah, I would absolutely say that.
Yeah.
The Expo, you bet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that might even be 2010, as a matter of fact.
I think it was 10. Yes, I think you're right.
We did it for a few years down in Florida. Yeah. Okay, and so you work for SurgeX, and what instrument do you play?
I play guitar. There's a lot of guitar players in our band. I see Richard's on the line here today too.
Hey guys,
and of course with Bob, actually we have a couple. We kind of have we have plenty of guitars in this band, so it's great because we have a lot of guitar oriented tunes. But I was really digging last year when we added or 2 years ago when we added the horns. What powerful feeling that is to have a big horn section behind you.
Okay, and you provided me the perfect segue. Let's go to the horn guys. We'll start with Rick first.
Hey, I'm Rick Santiago. I'm with Indie Audio Labs, brands Acurus and Aragon, and I play saxes. I mainly play tenor. I will be possibly playing alto, and I probably won't pull out the soprano for this gig, but I do that other places. Yeah, I've been playing for many, many years. I'm a weekend warrior like a lot of us. I play for the love of it. It's not, I wish I could play full time, but I'm not quite at that top echelon. But I love doing it, and I play mostly jazz, but some R&B, and I play in big bands, and I do some church gigs, and I do a little bit of everything. So
awesome. Thank you, Rick. Shane, could you give us your company and your background briefly?
Sure. Yes, my name is Shane Rich. I'm the technical director for RBH Sound, and I play trumpet. I played ever since I think fourth grade. Really got into initially classical, studied with some of the local symphony members, and I, although really enjoy jazz, some of my father was a trumpet player, still is, and was one of the big influences in my life. Started trumpet lessons with him, eventually, of course, played in college, and then I joined a military band, and so I play, off and on gigs, teach private lessons, but I enjoy any time I get to play my horn.
Awesome, thank you. And so we'll pick back up with the guitar players. And Jason, I'm looking at you right now. If you could provide a bit of your background and who you work for.
I'm Jason Mccraw. I work for Emerald. We manage the CEDIA Expo. I'm the show director for the show, and been to the show many, many times over the years. So I'm excited to come to the show working on it from this perspective. But also, started playing guitar when I was in middle school. Played in some bands in college. I was also sound man. We record live shows of bands, host open mic nights, those kind of things. Many moons ago, I haven't played in a band in some time, but I have a full setup in my basement and crank it up almost every weekend when I can. And, they always yell down from upstairs, "Hey, turn that down." But it's fun and still enjoy it. Keep wondering whether or not I should, get my wig, my cowboy boots and my bolo out for the show. But I think I'll go with this for now.
We could look to add some T-Rex down the road or something.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah.
All right, Rich, rounding out our guitar players, if you could provide your name, your company, and what instrument you play.
Sure. My name is Richard Charshan, and my company's called Acoustic Smart, and we specialize in doing private cinema interiors. And we've actually worked with Steve Haas over the years, who's playing with us now. And I play lead guitar and I play rhythm and whatever else they let me do. So, but I've been playing for a long time. I've been playing since I was a youngster, and I've been in various bands over the years. But playing with these guys has been a great love because it's not very often that you get together and not just a nice group of guys, but guys that don't have any egos, and that the fact that they actually do the homework. And then when you get together and you have one practice and then you actually see it come alive, it's like a remarkable thing that we did. And so just because of that, I love all the camaraderie and what we're doing here. And then when we did that virtual video, that was also pretty wild because nobody knew what the other guys were playing. And so, I mean, playing with Vince once, I took a chance and I figured, all right, Vince, probably be doing this. So I tried to do something different so we wouldn't be doing the same things. We wouldn't step on each other. And when it came together, it was like, it was kind of crazy.
It was remarkable. I couldn't believe how we had just chose the right different guitar parts.
Yeah, it's like we kind of just from playing that one time, we kind of knew each other. And then when Mitch did the mandolin, that was just like, that was crazy good, So, and then, just everything, the way we all played together, Rick with his horn parts and the arranging, and it was like a group of superheroes coming together, and then, just making it all happen. But yeah, so this year we have, me and Vince have a lot of challenging things, and we went over a couple of things, and I think we get the chance to play because I know Vince is probably working his ass off, and so am I. It'll really come together nicely, and it'll be a really nice surprise,
You guys were awesome, I gotta say, truly awesome. Look forward to hopefully playing this fall.
Yeah. Well, that's the big question, isn't it? We see what's going on over there, and considering all the hours we all put into it, I'm just hoping that we get a chance to play with what's happening. It's a little freaky right now.
Okay, Mitch, I want to save you for last since you're the bass player. No disrespect to bass players out there.
Yeah, I'm used to that. That's quite all right.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to keyboards now. And Steve, could you provide your company name, background, and I kind of gave it away what instrument you play, but what instrument you play?
Sure. And I'm Steve Haas, CEO of SH Acoustics, and this is my first time up at bat with the All-Star Band. I'm thrilled. I've been listening to the rest of you guys for the last 2 or 3 years, other than last year, only virtual. But yeah, I'm very excited. I've been playing keyboards since age 7. My grandfather was a concert pianist in Europe and US, and I never really took to classical a whole lot, but everything else, rock, pop, jazz, blues, soul, funk, you name it. I really love playing. I've played all through high school and college, and lately I've been in about 3 or 4 different bands and duos and trios. My current band is a yacht rock themed band. So for those of you who know what yacht rock is, it's pretty fun stuff to play and challenging
Serious
too.
channel for that, isn't
So,
I think it's on Sirius.
What was that?
There's like
Yeah,
a serious
exactly. There's a serious
rock
for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. So That's my story. I'm going to be playing keys and trying to contribute a bit of background vocals as well here for the group.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Minch, I guess if you could close this segment out.
Sure. First of all, Steve, it's really great to have you on board here. And
Thank
Don,
you.
I hope we get to play together at some point. Rick, on your side there, if you ever need a bass player on a big band, I mean, I used to play the upright in like a full blown, like, what is a 14-piece jazz band. So
That's cool.
anyway, yeah, so I'm a bass player, but I actually started off, here's news. I actually started off as a drummer, and I never actually told you guys this. And there were just so many drummers in the band, so I said, all right, I'll play guitar. And I picked up guitar and started playing guitar, and then all of a sudden there were so many guitar players, I said, okay, we need a bass player. And that's when I picked up the bass, and then we needed a mandolin, so I picked up the mandolin. So there's a consistent theme here, which basically says jack of all, master of none. And it's really great to play with you guys because everyone takes their piece very, very seriously because we know we're going to uplift each other and none of us wants to let each other down. And it's just phenomenal. I remember the first time we practiced, probably 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
And we just started off the first song and it clicked right out of the gate. Just blew me away. And I think we will continue doing that. So looking forward to playing with all you guys.
So Mitch, whenever parents come up to me and say, "Hey, what instrument should my kid play?" I say, tell them to play the bass because they'll always have a gig if they're a bass player. Guitars are a dime a dozen. You'll never get anywhere on a good, but bass player, you always have a gig.
The other thing is I played clarinet too in the regular high school band, and there were like 14 clarinetists. And I remember the band instructor asked if anyone had ever played bass clarinet. And of course I raised my hand. I'm getting out of here. There's so many freaking clarinetists. And he called my bluff and he said, okay, go ahead and go grab one out of the music room. And I'm like, what the hell is a bass clarinet? But anyway, it actually ended up pretty good, but I was in that closet opening up all these different cases till I found what I thought.
He's done such a super job for us. Could you hold it for him?
Okay, guys, it looks like we have Dave Silken online.
Hi, guys.
Dave is also
I have a special guest.
Is that
Hey guys,
Buzz?
it's Buzz. Mitchell.
Hey,
Robert.
how you doing, Buzz?
How you
Hey,
doing, Buzz?
I'm doing here. Well, we're trading bottles of wine here in Long Island.
I apologize for my lateness, but I got a surprise guest today.
I'm the one that held him up.
nice.
So I'm going to see you guys all in 3 weeks, right?
Count on it.
That's 3
Yes.
weeks already. Wow.
Even if it's just us, we're going to be there.
It might be.
Have a good one.
Take care,
Thanks for
bud.
doing that.
No problem.
Or if I rehearsal.
Sorry, guys.
No problem, Dave. Thank you for hopping online. Dave, we were going over our backgrounds a little bit, and we'll close things out with you. Dave, could you give us a background? What company you work for? What instrument you play?
What company I work for now?
Yes.
That would be DSG Distributors and Digital Sales Group, Metro. And I play bass.
Okay. All right. So that was nice and succinct.
What else would you like to know?
Where are you based out of?
New York, Long Island.
Okay. Awesome. All right, guys.
Well, actually, I have to tell you that me and Dave are now working together the last couple of months. We're on the same, team, and we're kicking ass, actually.
I've richified my showroom.
Yeah. We got like a whole bunch of seating there. We got a theater lined up, and we're
More
doing.
stuff coming.
Yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff coming. So we've been working together now for since like May or June or something like that.
That's awesome.
Since then, it's been great. Yeah. So.
Okay. I want to start in reverse order this time with my first real question here. Can you tell me, Dave, what inspired you to pick up your instrument, in this case, bass, and who are some of your early influences as a beginner bass player?
I was in 5th grade. I was a guitar player, and we had another guitar player and a drummer, and we were watching television, and we saw the Beatles play, and they decided, since I was the only one who actually had a job at that time, that I should become the bass player because I was the only one who could buy a bass. So that was pretty much it. I went out and bought a bass and started playing, and I never looked back. And I'm a much better bass player than I was a terrible guitar player. Strings were much too small, big fingers. And I mean, McCartney was my first influence because that's what we were listening to. We were like a Beatles cover band. Back then, there wasn't tribute bands, but I guess we were the first Beatles tribute band in our neighborhood. And I started getting turned on to a lot of progressive rock. So Chris Squire was always a hero of mine. I could never figure out how he could play those rhythms and sing at different times and different tempos and stuff. It was pretty amazing. And I liked Geddy Lee. I thought he was really good at the same thing. And then I got turned on to R&B, and that was kind of it for me. Once I saw, the Brothers Johnson, and I saw Louis Johnson slapping like that, I was like, yeah, I want to do that, because I never really liked playing with a pick. I like playing with my fingers, and I like playing percussively. And so, I was watching him and Stanley Clarke and Marcus Miller and guys like that. And those are like my main influences now. I still follow those guys wherever I go. I got to see Victor Wooten, a little private show with him at NAMM 2 years ago, at the last NAMM that there was. And that was a game changer for me. I wanted to really go home and throw my bass away. But, guys like that are, guys who just sit and play, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. They can do so much more with their instruments. We're all kind of trying to feed our families and make a living. And so, if you get a little playing time in, you're like, yeah, that was really good. And then you see a guy like this, you go, holy smokes. It would take me 150 years to be able to do that. But there's a lot of great bass has come a long way, because it was just kind of guys playing on the 2 and the 4 back in the 50s and the 60s. And you hear a lot of bass players now, and they're playing a lot more rhythmically, stuff that's kind of going along with the guitar players, and they're filling in and doing lots of stuff. So we're kind of getting out of our lane a little bit and playing out a little bit more, which is nice to see for a bass player. But I always kind of like being a pocket player, sitting around with the drummer. I love playing with Tim and with Jim, because they're also pocket players. So it makes us very easy to, not rehearse for a year and then show up for a gig, because you kind of know where they're going to be. And so that's, I like that stuff. I like playing, sitting in the rhythm, and that's why I like R&B, because it kind of just flows around, gives you a lot of openness to do what you want to do. How'd I do, Bob?
Okay, we'll move on to our other bass player, Minch. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Yeah, like Dave said, right? I mean, without the drums, without the bass, you guys are nothing.
That's what I meant to say.
Right, of course. I knew that. Kind of similar story, but in terms of bassists, I was really guys like John Entwistle for The Who. I mean, oh my God, when you listen to the creative bass, and the thing is, everyone listens to Roger Daltrey, but if you actually listen to the bass player, I mean, oh my God, he's incredibly creative. Another one like Dee Murray. I mean, you might think like Elton John. I mean, he was so freaking creative in terms of what he does with the Elton John band. You mentioned Paul McCartney. There's another one. It's like with those 3 bands, they don't really get the bass recognition that they should. And the bass really carries not just the beat, but actually takes lead in many cases in terms of the way that the music is interpreted. So bass is definitely a lot more, like you said, and Dave, than doing a walking bass on jazz, with the upright, or just doing the 2 and 4. Or, anyway, so I'm going to let the other guys talk a bit, but bass is just such a cool instrument that is so undervalued and underrated.
Okay, thank you, Minch. We'll move right into the guitar area, and we'll start with you, Wrench. Who were some of your early influences? What inspired you?
It's weird. Like, I'm like all over the place. I mean, I really started off with listening to like a lot of Johnny Winter, like in the early days, a lot of blues, because first you start off with blues and then you go into jazz and then other things. And I was really into like, I went through a heavy metal period, and then I went through, a soul period, and then I went through even classical. I took classical guitar when I was in college, and we used to do like trios, and things like that. And that was real interesting for me because everybody's doing something totally different, and then it all comes together, and it's just the synergistic thing. And it was very interesting for me. I mean, I grew up listening to all the bands from the 70s, the 80s, and I had an older brother, so he turned me on to like Deep Purple, the Made in Japan album, and every song was like 14 minutes long. And I remember like, I really didn't know what I was doing back then, and I would just find any song that didn't have a guitar player or bands that had songs that were like 25 minutes and just make believe I was part of the band and just like, do my thing and, I can try to find my place within the group or whatever they were doing. And I used to do a lot of that when I would come home from school. And that was like my 2 or 3 hours before my parents came home. And I would borrow my brother's guitar, which he never allowed me to do. And then, he would find that there would be a broken string or there'd be sweat on the neck, and he would pound the living hell out of me, and tell me not to do it again. And then, of course, I would creep into his room again when he's not around and take his guitar. So part of the reason why I started playing was because my brother didn't want me to play and touch his guitar, and that made me want to play with it more. And also my brother was a player, and I wanted to show him that I can be just like him, So that's kind of how the whole thing started. And then in my school, I had all these great guitar players, and some of them went on, to become pretty well-known guitar players. So everybody was sort of like trying to find their way, But then after a while, I realized there's always going to be another great guitar player, So I concentrated on writing songs and forming bands and try to create my own music, because I always figured there's always going to be somebody better than me lined up. So I always try to think of what's best for the actual song, and I always take it from a songwriter's type of perspective instead of just going off, and I think when you're listening to everybody playing around you and everybody finds their own space, like with this band, we all really listened to one another. And right from the get-go, it was like, it just locked, locked into place. And that's kind of what I love about this. Like me and Vince were talking and, talking about like that Molly Hatchet tune, and I remember seeing those guys years ago. And I never thought in a million years that I would actually ever play that tune, because back then when I was a kid watching that live on stage, it was mind blowing to see that kind of a thing. And now here I am for this all-star thing, like putting that song together, trying to figure all that stuff out. And I finally did, Vince. I actually did figure out my thought on that. But I was like, and when I was done doing it, I was like, I can't believe I'm playing this thing. And I remember seeing them like in the early 80s, opening up for the Outlaws, and nobody knew who they were. And they blew everybody off the stage, So that's one song I'm looking forward to playing, because that's not, Dreams is not a song that you hear many people play live. So that was like a real interesting pick, And then we have a couple of other really cool things with the, with the horns and we're doing that Humble Pie tune, which is pretty cool. And, the Beatles songs that we selected were kind of, not the norm either. Like back in the USSR, you don't hear a lot of people do, especially with the horn section. And I think when we did that last time, that really went over well. And then me and Vince worked out the harmony guitars, and we just said to each other, like, you take the low, like I'll take the low, and then you take the high. And then we came in, and then, Rob Archer was in place. Everybody was in place. Rick was in place. And it was like in one practice, it was just awesome. So, and then as far as, influences, I mean, it's funny, like every single year it changes, but like I love growing up listening to Peter Frampton. And I remember that he said that he was influenced by Wes Montgomery, who was like a jazz guitar player. So I still like listen to like a lot of Wes Montgomery to see where Frampton got all his octave playing and all that crazy stuff. And then with Van Halen, he was influenced by Alan Holdsworth and all these other guys. So then, you listen to what they were influenced by, and then you start listening to what they grew up on. And then you sort of, try to hone in on that and say, well, that's kind of cool. Look at what this guy's doing, But, and that's kind of, and now it's like, I'm like a chameleon to whatever is given to me, because I kind of, like, if I can be Southern, I'm learning how to be Southern. I just want to do what's best for the actual song. So sometimes that I don't even know, but it sounds like me anyway. But, we all try our best, I don't think anybody knows what they really sound like until you actually hear it, and then it's laid down.
Yeah, Rich, I'm telling you, we're going to do Outlaws next, right? There's some really great guitar licks there. You and Vince?
Don't even mention Greengrass and High Tide. I don't have that much time in
Yeah,
the
I
day
know.
to work on that.
With a 1 hour set, we could do Greengrass and High Tides and maybe one other song. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, that song is that's treacherous. Oh my God.
Okay, Rich, thank you. Let's move on to Jason. Jason, what were some of your early influences and what inspired you to pick up the guitar?
Well, originally started playing the guitar because I was in a folk group with my dad at church, and learned the basic chords, sang at church on Sundays, and I had a friend in that group who was a few years older than me, and he played a lot of other stuff, so I'd hang around with him, and he'd be like, "Hey," and then I took a class in middle school and high school, guitar class, and then after that, it was playing in different bands, and I played in cover bands. I played in a lot of little clubs around town, periodically. But then, the interest really was more creating your own material, writing your own songs. When I was growing up, early days of U2 and Bruce Springsteen and some of the bands already mentioned here, but also rock and Van Halen, Kiss. I still listen to a lot of that stuff today, hair metal, the like. I found as I've gotten older that I like maybe less distortion than I used to back in the day, and enjoy a lot of clean playing. But there's nothing like creating your own, coming up with chord progressions, writing your own lyrics, creating your own song, that type of thing. And I really do appreciate, listening to all types of music that have guitar in it. Appreciate especially songs that have great melodies and harmonies and arpeggios, and where it's well crafted, well produced. As I mentioned earlier, I used to record live shows, and that was always the thing I enjoyed the most, was trying to come up with a great mix. Because oftentimes, live on stage in a small club, it can be really loud, and so I'd mic everything, and I'd want to make sure that you captured what everybody was playing and then putting it together. So I totally appreciate that. Everyone has a role and a band to put it all together to have a great end result. And more than anything, music is a feeling, it's an emotion, and it's connecting and conveying and communicating with an audience, and it's also very personal. We all like all different types of music, and I think that's great. And I think it's exciting to have a group like this with so many different influences and coming from different places, not only in the country, but just getting together and have a love and passion for music and sharing that with the audience at the show. So I'm very excited for the opportunity to sit in on one or two songs, and more than anything, I'm excited to hear the whole group, and for our attendees at the show to really get the benefit of that. So happy to be here, and very supportive of everyone, and so I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Jason. And we'll close out the guitar players with Vince.
Well, Jason, just to kind of go off of something that you mentioned, the connection with the audience. I love the connection with the band, and I get a people tell me a lot whenever I play live. It's like, why don't you look at the audience? It's like, because I really don't care about them. I love when there's that connection between the bass player and the drummer, and you're just grooving, and it's just all about what we're doing. And it's like, if you guys want to listen to what we're doing, have at it. But I'm not really here for you. I'm really kind of here to be with these guys. So sometimes it works out for me, sometimes it doesn't. But I've been playing for a long time, like most of us, right? It was that thing that we've been doing for such a long time, and we got our 10,000 hours in, and now we're at a stage where, we're at this perfect crossroad of the songbook that we grew up with was awesome music, right? So all the stuff so when we got together that first time, we talk about how easy it was. Well, we've been listening to those songs for like 40 years, right? And they're ingrained in our heads. We know it's like and so it is kind of easy to get together. But my influences early on, I have to credit my sister. She bought a guitar, and there was a guitar sitting in the house, a beat up acoustic. And my best friend Gary Cosby and I, his dad taught us the cowboy chords, all the open chords down at the bottom. That's where we started out. And then I heard stuff on the radio. And it's like, oh man, Van Halen, that, like, wow, that, that I want to play like that. And actually, Steve Miller was another early song. It's not like I'm a huge Steve Miller fan, but I remember I wanted to play a Steve Miller song, and saved up my money, got cheap equipment, and then saved up more money and got good stuff. I had a Les Paul and a Marshall in high school. It's like, I don't know what else you want, right? When you're a high school student, and started taking lessons with a great guitar player in Raleigh, North Carolina. His name is John Wheelis. He turned me on to a whole new world. I was playing 3-chord rock, and he's like, well, there's other stuff out there, and he turned me on to the progressive rock scene. And I said, well, what should I be listening to? And to this day, he wrote down 20 artists that I should be listening to, and I still listen to those guys to this day. John McLaughlin, Alan Holdsworth, Mike Stern, just all these great fusion players, and actually, if there's a particular genre that's in my wheelhouse, fusion is what I love the best. The mixture of jazz and rock, playing jazz, chord construction using rock instruments, and my current list of guys that I listen a lot to, Oz Noy and Wayne Krantz and Jimmy Herring is a great player, and I went on a binge over this weekend of a Warren Haynes Government Mule kick. I just love those guys have found a way to use these musical patterns, these scales that they taught us all these long ago, and they turn it into music and musical ideas. And I think that's the step that I think we're all striving for, is to turn these scales into musical ideas. So that's my story. I love jazz. I love listening to jazz. I wish I was a jazz player, but so it's that distorted tone that just gets me going and gets me motivated to play. And I love the clean stuff too, but I need a little bit of grunge to get that. I need a little of this guy, get just a little edge on there,
Nice.
Who's your favorite jazz guitar player? Like, are you an Al Di Meola fan, or you?
I love Al Di Meola, but for me, Pat Metheny's the guy.
Yeah.
Pat Martino was on the list. He's kind of on the fusion side of thing, but
Jeff Beck when he did
yeah. I mean, the thing, people ask me, oh, who's your favorite guitar player? It's like, don't get me started. I love so many of them. It's like, don't ask me to pick one. There's we've been graced with so many wonderful players, across the board, not only guitar players. Hell, Chick Corea, we lost him this last year. One of my favorite musicians, and being a pianist or a keyboard player. I had the opportunity pre-COVID, went up to the Blue Note during Chick Corea's. He did 5 weeks at the Blue Note, 4 or 5 nights a week, every 3 nights a different band for 5 weeks, and it was his. It's like I'm gonna invite all my friends that I've played with over the years, and I went to the fusion, the 3 nights of fusion. So he had John McLaughlin, Victor Wooten on the bass, and Lenny White on the drums, and they played both Mahavishnu tunes and Return to Forever tunes, and it was just
That's cool. That'd be like a religious experience.
It was great. What was really cool was in the audience, you could tell, were all these musicians. Jimmy Herring was in the audience. The Roots were they? It's like, all right, it's like, oh, it's like, players came to go see these guys because this was the real deal.
Like being in school. It's like being in class.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Never got to see him.
Sorry, Vince, but I was going to say, moving on to our horn players, Steve, we'll save you for last, but moving on to the horn players, Shane, who were some of your early influences?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, my father played for a rock band back in the 70s as a horn player. And so I was introduced at a young age to groups like Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Tower of Power,
Yeah.
all those groups that had a lot of horn lines in them. And I love that music. And while I didn't get much of a chance to play that growing up, it's great to be able to play it whenever I can. So I'm really excited to play with this group and do some of the arrangements with horns that we're doing. The blues stuff. Jazz was a big thing in our house, and so everything from big band jazz like Stan Kenton big band to, of course, trumpet player specific type things like Maynard Ferguson, Chuck Mangione, more traditional jazz like Freddie Hubbard, later on Wynton Marsalis, those kind of artists. But I really love it all, and anything with horn lines is, of course, my cup of tea. What I listen to the most. But that being said, I've been exposed to a lot of other great musicians because my dad was a real hi-fi nut. He owned Macintosh system, the amplifiers, speakers. And so he was just big into listening to music, everything from, let's say Weather Report, groups, Pat Metheny, all the big jazz people. He was just, I counted a blessing that I was exposed to so much. And then, of course, classical was a big thing in my youth, and that I basically studied as a classical player growing up through high school, but then got introduced to big band, jazz band type playing at that point, and have had some really great opportunities to play with musicians like Doc Severinsen and people like that. I really look forward. This is a little bit different. This group that we have here is a little bit of a different experience for me. I'm new to the group, and so I really look forward to playing with you guys and hearing you jam. I heard you a couple of years ago at CEDIA, and I was really blown away. I was really impressed with your musicianship and just how well you guys clicked together such a short period of time of playing together. So happy to be with you.
Excellent.
Shane, thank you. Rick, could you provide some of your early musical influences?
Sure. I think I got into jazz first, and that's probably because I played sax in high school. And you kind of, as a saxophone player, you tend to gravitate and wherever it's being used. And so at the time, it was really popularized in things like Spyro Gyra.
I was about to.
So I remember listening to some of those early vinyl records and just being blown away by Jay Beckenstein and all the stuff that he could do seemingly effortlessly. And so I loved listening to that. And then that kind of kept me going in more towards a fusion direction, I think, initially, which was interesting because growing up in high school, rock is the big thing. So I'm kind of crossing over between jazz and rock with what I'm listening to, even though nobody else I know is listening to what I'm listening to. But it was interesting. I went to college and I played in there, and I started playing with the jazz band, but I really didn't know what I was doing for a long time. I never had formalized lessons or anything. I was an ear player pretty much, just copying recordings and stuff like that. And I gave a short stint as a nighttime DJ at the college radio station. and our motto is it doesn't matter, nobody's listening, right? So so I couldn't give away in a period of an hour. I could not give away 2 tickets to this unknown group called Corea and his Electric Band. So I'm like, well, I might as well go.
That's funny.
And that blew me away. And that just, I fell in love with that group. Everybody in that group, you know, Weckl and Patitucci on the bass, and obviously Chick, and then Eric Marienthal on the sax. And I just followed them for a long time. I'd buy the transcriptions and I'd try to work through some of Marienthal's transcriptions, you know, with, you know, mixed success because he played some really complicated stuff. But I was on that kick for a long time. I started playing with some other friends in a small group combo environment. We tried to do electric band stuff, and because that stuff was so over our heads, we kind of backed it down. And then a guitar player in our group said, "Hey, I can get you a real book." And at the time that was like, ooh, you know, that's kind of illegal, but these, you know, this is where the gold is, right? So I got myself a real book, and you know, it was one of the unauthorized ones, right? So, but it was like, wow, this has all the standard tunes written out. I can learn them, and I can learn the changes, and so that was, you know, the beginning of kind of getting into more trad jazz, I guess, traditional jazz. And so I used to play with some small groups, and then we started getting gigs around restaurants and bars and weddings and things like that. And then in college, I played in the big band, graduated, and then I went to before I was with Indie Audio Labs, I was with Shure Microphones up in Chicago for many years. And I loved that job and that environment because it's a whole bunch of musicians. And so, you know, in the holidays and things like that, we'd always have jam sessions and concerts for the employees. And so I got to play with, you know, Tim Veer doing rock versions of you know, Christmas tunes and things like that. And so and then I played with some big bands that had like small horn sections just for like, you know, almost like an R&B format type thing. So influences, and, you know, as a horn player, you obviously listen to Coltrane and Bird if you're into jazz. I really liked Henderson, Joe Henderson, and Houston Person and Dexter Gordon, some of the real full tenor sounds. And that's why I tend to gravitate towards tenor. And then, you know, I mentioned Marienthal and obviously, you know, some other ones that I saw that have really blown me away would be, you know, Brecker. Obviously, Brecker is just a no-brainer. If I want to chill and just listen to some great jazz tenor sax, Brecker just blows me away. He was so amazing and virtuosic on his instrument. And actually a contemporary guy now, Eric Alexander. He's a guy that I first saw back when he was starting his career back in, you know, early 2001 or so. I saw him down at the Village Vanguard. And I remember it distinctly because it was right around just after 9/11. So we were down at the Vanguard, and New York was sort of in a weird state at the time. But I saw this young kid named Eric Alexander, and he just blew my mind. And he went on to record with everybody in the jazz world, and he's had a prolific career. I got a chance to take a lesson with him in Chicago when he was playing at the Jazz Showcase down there. So I got a little bit of tidbits from him, but lot of influences, a lot of jazz, quite frankly, but also a little bit of church playing and you know, improvisation being the common theme, I guess, and all that stuff. I don't have a lot of formal training, but everything I do is by ear, and I just keep trying to listen and play along and play better. So that's kind of my story.
Rick, if you thought New York was in a weird state back then, you should come on back. We got a surprise for you.
Yeah.
Okay, closing this question out, Steve, what were some of your early musical influences?
Well, as I said, I started playing around 7, and I got exposed to a lot of different genres of music, from, you know, rock, pop, jazz, soul, and such, and then show tunes, got into school, and I actually started playing saxophone, tenor tone sax. So it gave me the opportunity to play in concert bands and marching bands. It's hard to march a piano, I'll tell you. So good thing I actually was playing sax. I'm not great on sax, but much better on keyboards, fortunately. But certainly it exposed me to a lot of different types of music that I wouldn't normally listen to. In all honesty, though, I really didn't get inside the music until really my adult years, and even to this day. In other words, I learned the music, learned a lot of great songs, and was able to develop my skills, but never really thought about, other than like lead piano players like Billy Joel and Elton John, who were really out there. I never thought about the John Lords, even what John Paul Jones did in Zeppelin. I'm really discovering that over the last, decade or so, just how amazing that stuff is. When I had my concertino acoustic enhancement system, I was able to bring top level artists into my facilities that I designed in my own studio. And it was just great being exposed to them. I developed a marketing relationship for a number of years with Steinway. So getting to not only hear, but really interact with a lot of fantastic Steinway artists was just such a blessing to me, because it just really allowed me to appreciate what that level of talent is. Thinking about other influences, Donald Fagen, Steely Dan, right? I mean, such great music, the work he's done, even bringing Michael McDonald in on a lot of things, not just vocally, but thinking about what Michael has done on keyboards, and now with my yacht rock group, it really fits very well with that. Somebody mentioned Southern rock. I've always loved the Leonard Skinners. That's why I was so disappointed that those songs are not going to be played this year, but maybe next year. Yeah. With Billy Powell there at Leonard Skinner, even Chuck Leavell on the Allman Brothers, everything that he's been doing with them. It's just such great stuff that I'm really appreciating now, learning and perfecting there. So again, to be able to play with all you guys, I've learned how to play with one guitar and learn how to play with two guitars in a group. It's going to be fun trying to fit myself into a 4 or 5 guitar group, but I'm sure it'll be awesome.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Guys, we're running short on time, so I want to finish up with one more question, and this is a 2-part question. If you could briefly answer this, and this is, what instrument are you going to be bringing to CEDIA Expo 2021? And the other half of the question is, if there was one piece of gear, we'll make this a bit nerdy, if there was one piece of gear that you would ever want to own, like for a guitar player, it would probably be like a 59 Gibson Les Paul or something like that. But if there was one piece of gear that you could ever own, what would it be? And Steve, we'll start with you. What are you bringing to the expo, and what's that one piece of gear that you aspire to own?
Mm-hmm. Well, I am bringing one of my workhorse keyboards, a Yamaha MOXF8. I'm actually shipping it out because we couldn't find one locally, and I really take pride in all the sounds that I create for it. So I'm taking the risk and shipping it out, and it's going to be great to do that. One of the pieces of gear I've always wanted to own is right behind me here, my Keytar. So a Roland Max Edge.
I always wanted one of those too.
What?
I always wanted one of those too.
Yeah, got to compete with your guitar, the guitarist up front a little bit. So yeah, finally got one of these, and just trying to figure out how to play it with 4 hands like I usually am with my boards.
So next year, then we got to do Frankenstein, so he can do the keyboard parts like the way it does it. You carry it, and
exactly.
Or got a batch from Chick Corea, right?
A lot of fun stuff to do with it.
Yeah, stuff right there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Steve. We'll move on to the bass players. Dave, what piece of gear are you bringing out to the gig, and is there one bass that you would love to have?
I will be bringing my hazmat suit. That's the most important piece of gear I think I'm going to bring this year. Now I'm going to bring my Ibanez Roadstar like I brought last year. Mitch and I actually shared that last year. That's been my road bass since 1984, and it hasn't gone out of tune once. So it's pretty
Nice
cool.
bass.
Yeah, it's fun. And as far as gear, I always wanted the Stanley Clark Alembic bass.
Yeah.
You know, I watched him play it when I was young, and the sound was always amazing. I don't know why. I just never got around to buying one, but someday, one of these days I will.
Okay, Minch.
Gonna bring this baby with me here. It's my customized Fender Precision. Not like to travel with it before, but I got a nice soft case for it, so it should be okay. And like Dave said, that Alembic, I mean, there's one for about $18K. That would be my go-to. I've also always wanted to play a Rickenbacker, but I understand it's somewhat limited. But yeah, I'd be all over that Alembic, Dave. I'd even share it with you. We can go in.
Yeah, maybe we should, we can get a couple of the guys and we'll do like 3 months a year.
Right? Yeah, awesome.
Unity bass. Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to the guitar players, starting with Vince.
So I've got some travel challenges. Our youngest is going to school. He's going to be going to Cal Arts, and his move-in date is the day after CEDIA. So I have to fly from Indy out to California to move him in. So instead of lugging a guitar around, our good friend Jeff Gardner, since he's a homeboy, is going to lend me a guitar. So I got a lot of different guitars to choose from here at the house. So I'm going to go with a Strat. He's going to supply me with a Strat because Richard, I think, is bringing more of a solid an LP. So we'll have kind of a different sounds. And Bob's he's got another. Actually, Bob, what are you bringing? Are you bringing I
put this out specifically for.
Oh, okay. So all right. So a Charavel.
Charavel, yeah.
All right. Excellent. Yeah. So
Cool.
So we'll see. On that one, playing a guitars are very personal instruments. So hopefully I can bond with it quickly. But as far as a piece of gear, I know it's easy to like buy a pedal to do this, but I want a real Leslie cabinet. That's what I want. But it's so impractical. It's so stupid to get one. You get a pedal to make, but when you
Tough
really
to travel with, eh?
Yeah.
Very tough to travel with.
Yeah.
I definitely know the feeling, Vince.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got a
Thank you,
simulator one. So
Vince. Rich, what instrument will you be playing, and what piece or what instrument do you aspire to own?
So I've been playing. Oh, that,
Where
this is a guitar question, isn't it?
That's okay. So I'm going to be bringing my Gibson Les Paul, the same one I used last time, just because Vince is playing the Strat. I also own a Strat too. And as far as gear goes, I mean, I try to keep it simple. I try to. I will bring my pedal board because we have a couple of things that need delay and other things that are. I was talking to Vince about, so I'm going to bring it this time around. But normally I try to keep it simple so that I let the amp sort of do its thing. I've always wanted to play through a Mesa Boogie. That's been like a dream of mine. So the fact that I'm playing through one, thank you, Rob, is sort of like a dream come true. So that's worth the trip alone. As far as on my wish list for guitars, I've been looking for a white SG with like a whammy bar. Very old school. They're very hard to find.
Oh, you mean a Bigsby?
Yeah, it's hard to find a good one. And as far as something cool I've always wanted, just for the hell of it, I've always wanted to get a Theremin. Like if you guys know what that is.
The Theremin there.
Yeah, you do. I was like, just to do like a little bit of that, like on
Dazed and
a whole lot of love, like what Paige did. I just thought that was so freaking cool. And maybe do it like in the middle of a song, just because it'll just freak people out because it's just so out of place and so weird. That's like the only thing that I've always said, that would be kind of cool to try to do that. And a talk box is, is another fun thing to do.
Okay. Okay, thank
just
you.
bring out my theremin patch on my keyboard for you, Rich, so you can feel the S.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll move on to horns. And Rick, what sax do you play? And is there a sax that you would long to own?
Well, I'm actually pretty fortunate. I own a pretty good one. I own a Mark 6 tenor from Selmer. It's original Paris Selmer from about 1969. That's my tenor. My alto is a early transition era balanced action from about 1939, and I picked it up at Roberto's on 42nd Street, New York. So I've got some nice saxes. I'm pretty good in that department. The two things I've always wanted is years ago, there used to be some stores around where you could go in and you could play like 10 different mouthpieces and find just the right tip opening and construction and beak shape and all this kind of stuff. And those places don't exist anymore, and you just can't get that experience A/B testing on Amazon or anything like that. So I kind of wish I could find a store like that here in Indiana. Maybe it exists and somebody will send a comment or something. But and I guess the piece of gear that I've always wanted to own is that I kind of want to play with an EWI, and Jay Beckenstein used to mess with that. It's such cool sounds you can get out of it. But I'm an electronic guy and I'm a sound guy, and I know that if I got my hands on an EWI, that would be a major time sink. So I'd be gone. So it's probably a good thing I don't have one of those.
Okay, Rick, thank you. Shane, how about you?
Yeah.
What do you play and what do you aspire to own?
So I play a Yamaha professional trumpet, large bore. It's sort of an older horn. I've had it for about 30 years, but it's just, I haven't played anything else I like better, honestly. And I play a Warburton mouthpiece. Has a separate rim and shank, so it's really adjustable. I have several different cups and rims, and that allows me to play all different kinds of music, from classical to jazz to studio type stuff. Get a brighter sound. So if I were to have my choice, I'm going to agree. I would go with some kind of electronic valve instrument. In fact, I've always wanted to play. It's called the EVI, electronic valve instrument. Niall Steiner came out with that as essentially electronic version of the trumpet. And I know, there's some newer instruments out there now, Yamaha and others make that. I'd really like to try something electronic, just because you can get so many different sounds out of it. It'd be neat to meld a wind instrument with some kind of synthesizer type instrument.
Awesome. Thank you. Guys, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to speak with me about your backgrounds in music and about the CE Pro band, about the upcoming CEDIA Expo gig. And I look forward to seeing you all in Indy and playing with you on September 1st. Thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Rob, see you soon, guys.
Good to see everybody.
Later. Bye.
Bye, everyone.